Hi, everybody, and welcome to Drop Shot, where the love for tennis meets the thrill of competition. My name is Michele Dinella, and I will be your host and fellow tennis enthusiast. Join me on my personal tennis journey from the clay courts of southern Italy to the bustling streets of Washington, D.C. In each episode, my guests and I will share personal experiences, we'll comment on Grand Slams, analyze players and stats, and even offer tips on gear and apparel. Whether you are a seasoned pro or maybe just picking up a racket, sit back and get ready to serve, volley, and ace your way through the fascinating world of tennis. All right, listeners, the episode that you were all waiting for is finally here. I am joined with my guest for today, Stefano Tognazzi. You have learned to know him, to appreciate him. He has been my spy in Queen's Club a few weeks ago, and this time we are so happy, so thrilled to announce that Stefano has been at Wimbledon, but not once, not twice. He has been there every single day of the tournament. He's been camping outside, and we have some good stories for you. We have some tea to spill. So, what we are going to do with this Wimbledon episode, we're going to split it in two halves. The first one is going to be about the experience of being at Wimbledon every single day of the tournament, and also about WTA and the women's tournament. And the second half is going to be, which is going to come out tomorrow, the next day from when you're listening, is going to be about ATP and the men's tournament. So bear with us. It's going to be a pretty long journey. And I want to start it by greeting my friend and co host at this point, Stefano Tognazzi. Tell us everything about your experience, Stefano.
Hi, Michele, and hi, everybody. Thanks again for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be here to talk about tennis. And yeah, as you anticipated, this year I managed to do something that is quite uncommon, and I don't know actually how many people managed to do it, because you'll also understand that it's not the healthiest thing to do. But yeah, I managed to do it, and I went to every single day of the tournament. So yeah, it was an absolutely amazing experience, even better than last year. So yeah, I can't wait to get started. And I'll start with this. There is a ranking of tennis. So there is tennis. Above tennis, there is tennis on grass. Above that, there is tennis on grass at Wimbledon. And above that, there's tennis on grass at Wimbledon at center court. And that's basically how it is. The You will hear me refer to the Wimbledon club as the club multiple times during this episode. Don't get confused. It's not like a nightclub or a dance club. I'm referring to the tennis club. And I have to say that those 19 courts that are used for the tournament are the best 19 tennis courts in the world. And it feels like an amusement park when you're there, and it has this feeling of kind of tennis Disneyland. So, but differently from Disneyland, which is open all year round, being a private club, you can only be there for like these 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's best to maximize the time you spend there. And it has been amazing. And sometimes the magic of Wimbledon happens, and you never know when it's going to happen. But yeah, uh, it can happen. And it does happen. And it happened to me multiple times this year. So I'm very, very happy, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Let's start from the basics, Stefano, because something that I'm sure a lot of our audience does not know is that you don't necessarily need a ticket to get into Wimbledon. And so I think a lot of people are curious to hear from you. How does it work? How long do you have to be in the queue in order to access the stadium?
Yes, so this is one of main misconceptions about Wimbledon is that it's quote expensive or impossible to get in. So there are three main ways to get tickets or into Wimbledon, and ways are let's say there's a public ballot that if you win, you are given the opportunity to buy a pair of tickets for one day, and that will guarantee you a seat in one of the show courts, which is center court, court number one, or court number two, and sometimes also court number three. And the point is that ground pass is not sold at all. Basically, you just have to queue and hope that your number is low enough in the queue that you will get granted admission with a ground pass. Now there are two caveats to this. First of all, I'm not really interested into the main show course. I really enjoy having the ground pass and just go there and watch many matches on the outside course, especially in the first week that we're going to talk about later. And the cost for a ground pass this year is £30, so still pretty reasonable. But yeah, you have to queue to get it, and there's no other way to get the ground pass unless you're kind of like a guest of a player or part of a team or of the press member. And the other caveat of the queue is that every single day, around 1,500 tickets for the show courts are given to the queue. So the first 500 are offered a ticket for center court. The second 500 are offered a ticket for court number one, and the third are offered a ticket for court number two, depending on availability. And in that case, you would have to pay the full price of the day. For instance, we're going to talk about later the magic of Wimbledon. But yeah, and these are sold all the way to the semifinals. Otherwise, I guess it goes very crazy. And queuing is part of a British culture, and the Brits love queuing, and the queue is just an experience of its own. Uh,
National sport.
yes, nobody is so awesome because while you're in the queue, you can queue for other stuff. Like there's a queue for the coffee, there's a queue for the food, and they just so happy they go crazy. And the third way, which is the expensive one, is to actually buy a ticket. And there are few tickets that are legally that can legally be sold, and they are in an unregulated market. Means that the person that is selling it is able to set his own price. And for instance, those tickets that are called the banter ticket, they were going for around 10,000 British pounds. Yes, for yesterday's final. So yeah, that's kind of the expensive way to get in. And yeah, those are the three main ways to get into Wimbledon. And unfortunately, with the popularity of tennis surging and more people going early, you kind of have to be in the queue quite early if you want to enjoy your full experience. So, for instance, my average time of arriving in the queue, especially in the first week, was 4 a.m. And I live quite close, so it was quite, and I know the area very well, so it was quite good for me, and managed to like go back home, sleep, and then go back there in the morning, have a nap in the fields while queuing, and then eventually you get in. And this year was much better organized than last year. So last year I went in before play started only once of the 11 days, no, 12 days I've been there, while this year every single day I was in before play starts. So I enjoyed way more tennis than I did last year.
Now, there is an element that you have to take into the equation if you are planning to do this as Stefano did this year and last year, which is the rain, which is the UK weather in July, which I don't think is very helpful for that. What do you think, Stefano?
Yes, we can start with the craziest queue I've ever did. But to finish off, there are also people that decide to not enter, and they're given the opportunity to queue for the following day. This basically guarantees you center court. Not It's not often that more than 500 people camp, but you will not be allowed in the grounds on that specific day. So yeah, I just like to go in every day rather than be guaranteed center court for the following day. And yeah, we go to the main one of the main stories of the queue, which was first Friday. Basically, the games on center court are Tiafo against Alcaraz and Raducanu against Sakari, and of course Yannick Sinner in this order. So my plan was go very very early in the queue. As soon as I get in, go to the resale booth and sign myself in. We're going to talk about this later, and probably I would have had a great opportunity to get a ticket from the resales. Hopefully, as soon as the Yannick match started, because a lot of people would leave after Carlos Alcaraz and then supporting like the British player Raducanu in this case. So I was in good shape, but I saw the weather forecast and it was planning to rain the whole morning, like uninterrupted rain the whole morning. And so I knew what I was going into. And I was like, do I really want to do this? And usually when it rains and people know it's going to rain, it might deter them from joining the queue. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do this. And I went there at 4 in the morning and I got number 1,800. And I was like, unbelievable. Because I can't even buy a court number two ticket. And like it's also out the doors, that one. So no play is guaranteed. And I was happy because for the first half an hour it didn't rain. And I thought that, well, maybe just for a bit the weather forecast was wrong, but it turns out that it was not wrong at all. It started raining around 4:30 in the morning and it was relentless. It didn't stop raining for a single second, but I was very very well prepared. Unfortunately, the people in front of me, there was a group of three people and a single dude in front of me. They had absolutely nothing except for an umbrella. And like they were really, really unprepared for what was coming on. And I had some, like garbage bin bags that I had just in case to make something to protect myself even more. And I gave it to them just to like not sit on the kind of wet grass. And yeah, that was my good gesture for the day. And it was funny because one
You're
of the
going to heaven.
no 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 you it's what I call the Wimbledon karma. The Wimbledon karma. It raises your level of Wimbledon karma you have. Then you're more likely
Okay.
to get good Wimbledon magic.
I was gonna ask you what was your setup, what was the gear that you used for the rain, but you started already going into that. I had a similar experience a few weeks ago. I went to see the last friendly game before the start of the Copa America here in Baltimore, uh, and it was supposed to rain. The forecast said that it was supposed to rain during the game. It was Argentina versus Guatemala, and all the stars were playing. Messi played all 90 minutes. Di Maria joined the game. Lautaro. By the way, what a great weekend of sports this was. So much happened, both inside and outside the sports field. And there is so much that I would like to say. But anyway, we got lucky because there was no rain until the end of the game. But then, as we were going to pick up our car, it started pouring like it was the worst rainstorm that I had seen in years. And even though I was prepared and I brought like a very thick raincoat, I went home and like I was drenched anyway, even underneath the raincoat. So I guess you can do up to a certain extent, but I don't know if there's something that's gonna save you. What did you do? Tell me your secret.
Yeah, I was absolutely drenched as well. My setup was like my classic big kind of picnic type of almost. Well, it took some rain. It was soaked in the end, but it's like one of those like waterproof type of material. It's quite big. It's like 2 meters per 2 meters. Then I have my usual beach towel, and then I had two umbrellas just in case one broke. But then one you can use to protect the legs, but then the water flows between the two. So you basically have to sit in a very, very compact position and stay under one umbrella for as much as you can. And then I had these extra bean bags that I got to make like cut the sleeves out and protect the clothes a bit, but I gave them away. And it's funny because afterwards, one of the guys that was in front of me, he went to the shops and he bought some. And when he came back, he offered me to give me back like the three of them that I gifted to them. And I was like, I can't accept it, otherwise it will ruin my karma, which sounds stupid. But what happened next is what happened next is we made it to the ticket office, and there's a urban legend. Like, I know it happened to some of my friends that do something similar as what I do. But if you go to the ticket booth and you're alone, especially, there is a chance that there are like some single seats left over from the main courts. And they're like, well, we have some leftovers for center court or court number one. But I heard the stories. It never happened to me. They always told me, ask them. And they always told me, no, we never did anything like that. And so that day, I walk up to the counter and I see the guy has a weird smirk on his face. And he was like, if you want, I do have a leftover for center court. And I was like, is it restricted view or something? And it was like, no, no, it's just a normal ticket just behind the referee's chair. And I was like, I don't even know why I asked the question. The answer was yes anyway. So paid the 120 that it was, I think, for the day, and got to see two world number one playing at center court. And it was a great match between Tiafo and Alcaraz as well. And also I also got to see Alcaraz in spite of what happened at Queens. So I was very, very happy that day, but I was absolutely drenched. And yeah, the Wimbledon magic happened for sure on that day.
Now we are gonna start trying to say Alcaraz, but it's not a sound that we have in Italy. So apologies for that. It's gonna be Alcaraz for us. But yes, I wanted to go into another side of the story, which is the incredible people that you met just by being at Wimbledon, because we have talked off mic during the last few days, and I can guarantee that there are some crazy story that Stefano has for you.
Yes, of course, just walking around the club, there's a chance you bump into people that may or may not be famous with some certain degree in some countries. And some of them also can happen to be in the queue for whatever reason. For instance, uh, I was queuing one day next to a family that was originally from South Africa, and I actually spotted a rugby player that played for the South African national team in the queue. So it can happen in any shape or form. Obviously, in the club, because there is only one place where the players stay. They actually have to walk on the courts. It's quite small, and they have to walk between the people. And it's quite funny because you're just randomly walking. you see a couple of security guys, and then you realize that behind them there is Jasmine Paolini, which is very hard to see in a crowd. Like she's not the tallest one of the bunch, and or sometimes you just see a big tall guy, and it's like, whoa, that's Daniil Medvedev. So that's actually quite cool. You can do celebrity watching when you're inside, like I was at the Musetti Fritz match where the Queen was moved from center court to court number one, and I was basically sitting opposite to the Queen of England, the current Queen of England, obviously, and yeah, and then you meet a lot of people. Like a friend of mine who's Italian, we met at Wimbledon in the queue last year, and we queued together almost every day. You make friends. I met people from Canada, from the US, from South Africa, from New Zealand. It's a very very mixed crowd, and it's very nice. And sometimes they're curious. I can answer all their questions about the queue, and yeah, you just talk. Also because the queue is quite old school. Like there's a big crowd of people, and so the internet doesn't work mainly. So yeah, you end up spending talking or doing what we call old school activities, reading books, listening to music from your iPod shuffle and stuff like that. So it's a very very nice experience in general, especially if you're in the mood of talking. And yeah, and one of the other stories, people you meet also inside of the tennis club are all sorts of people. You can sit so close to the coaching members of the team. You're so close to the course. And yeah, I would like to give a big shout out to Bob Hagan, which I met I think day 8 or 9 in the tournament, and he has been working as a PR for the Minnesota Vikings. And I have a very nice green shiny Miami Dolphins jacket, which is very recognizable, which is great in these events because if you know people that are looking for you, you're very easy to spot. But also it means that you can't do stupid things because if they want to kick you out, you're also very easy to spot. So we started talking, and it was crazy day. I think Saturday, the day of the ladies' final, I started to ask him about few questions about the NFL, and actually, one of my favorite NFL coaches was for the head coach for the Vikings for quite some time, and he had a great working relationship with it. So basically, Saturday morning, I woke up, went to the queue, enjoyed the women's final from the screens from the hill, and thinking that I would just go to Wimbledon, and that day ended up with me FaceTiming one of my favorite head coaches of all time, and it was such a great experience. That's kind of like what happens. That was beyond the magic of Wimbledon. That was the magic of Wimbledon to the cube, probably to the third or to the fourth. Yeah, you can have these sorts of experiences. You obviously bump into the TV coverage, which often they are around the grounds at ground level. Last year, I spoke a few minutes with Barbara Schriff, that is the main anchor for Eurosport, and they're usually super, super nice as long as you're nice, obviously. So, yeah, what I say is that respect the rules of the club, be a nice person, and yeah, the club will reward you with the magic of Wimbledon, and you'll never know what it's gonna be. Sometimes it's a lucky seat at center court, sometimes is meeting great people. So yeah, and obviously all of this is uh, always with great tennis on the background, and sometimes it's a bit on the background, and sometimes you're very close to the action. So I think we can start from the worst match I saw, which was the aforementioned match between Raducanu and Sakkari, which I watched because I had center court tickets in the fifth row, and I did not want to leave, but that was a bit of a pain to watch. I know that Michele has a soft spot for Sakkari, so I wonder if he watched that match and what he thought about.
I should stop watching Sakari games, honestly, Stefano, for a while, because I believe that Raducanu has been in good shape lately, and I was very impressed not by the fact that she beat Sakari, because I saw that coming, but I was impressed to see her lose in the, I think it was the next round, against someone like Lulu San, which is WTA 100 and something. So a very new player that I had seen probably one or two times before. But I have to say that Lulu San has played a splendid Wimbledon, and we'll have a chance to talk about that more in depth. But going back to that game, I want to hear your thoughts, Stefano, if you saw anything that stood out to you, which I didn't have the impression, honestly.
Yeah, when it comes to WTA matches, I encourage everybody to go and watch tennis live because it's so much faster than it looks on the television. And yeah, it's a bit unfair in the sense that when the match before you is Alcaraz Tiafo and the match afterwards is Sinner, it feels like watching a match being played at slow motion when the WTA players have the middle spot, which is unfair to them in the sense that obviously they're not playing in slow motion and they're playing at the best level that they can produce. But yeah, I was really, really disappointed. I felt that Sakari was doing what they call like moon balls. Uh, every single defensive shot was like looked like a lob, and it was just painful to watch. And Raducanu broke her at the very start of the match and basically never looked back. And she deserved to win. And there's also a big push of the crowd here. They really, really love Raducanu, and in spite she was a very, very wonder kid, and they still hope that she can do very, very well. And yeah, you got the push of the crowd, and Sakari was never into that match, like not even a chance. And the shots she was playing, they were like lucky that they didn't hit the ceiling multiple times, and they were not lobs, they were just like surviving the rally. And yeah, for I am exaggerating a bit, there were only two or three that went all the way up, but it felt that she was not connected very well with the ball that was coming to her way. And yeah, there's another thing. The only time I like to not think about tennis is when I'm at the Wimbledon. So I just like to try to turn off my analytical mind and just focus on enjoying the game from that close, because the action is so cool. You get to see way more details, like the few blades of grass in the shoes and stuff like that. So I don't try to get like a technical or analytical opinion on those matches, but you also feel it way more when you're that close. And also, going back to the club, the cool thing about Wimbledon is that there is no bad seat in Wimbledon. Every single seat is amazing, including the very last row of court number one or center court. They're much closer, for instance, than the seat I had at Queens. So you're always, always close to the action, and that makes tennis look differently. And the magnitude of difference that you experience live, going back to the difference between the ATP and the WTA, is even bigger. So yeah, a bit unfair, but it is the truth, unfortunately. So um, yeah, there's that. Plus, I really thought Sakari played a pretty poor game. And one thing I want to add on Lulu San is that she did qualify, and here again, one of the downsides of Wimbledon is that, differently from other tournaments, where actually being a qualifier might help sometimes, because you play usually the matches on the same course where you actually play the tournament. So somebody coming from clay and he's already qualified and he has to play on a hard surface, meets a qualifier in the first round, that might be a dangerous match, because that qualifier knows that hard court very well, because he just had to play 3 or 4 matches there to qualify. So it's a bit of an advantage. While here is not the case, because you play the qualifiers in Roehampton, which obviously grass courts, but they're not obviously as good as the Wimbledon courts. So yeah, very impressed by the run of Lulu San, which she had like a massive boost also in the rankings due to reaching the latter stages of the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And since we're getting into the action of WTA, I wanted to start off by saying that grass is always tricky. Grass always um, destroys the odds and mixes them a little bit. In fact, we had a lot of upsets this time in WTA compared to what we saw in Madrid, Rome, and then in Paris with the Roland Garros. We had a pattern of consistency that was building up. We would see always the same faces up in the quarterfinals and the semifinals. This time, I have had many letdowns by many players that I was expecting to do better, starting from Iga Swiatek, which really, really surprised me. Losing, I thought I think it was in the round of 32, if I remember correctly, against Putintseva. Um, Putintseva played well, first of all, but she didn't play brilliantly. She didn't do anything uh, outside of Swiatek's comfort zone. And in fact, the first set and a half, I would say, Iga Swiatek was playing as she usually does, hungry for every single point. No mercy, no nothing. But then something happened in her mind. There was probably a switch, and I really can't wrap my head around what happened. I don't know if you have a theory about it, but she's not the only one for sure. We've also seen Coco Gauff getting out in the round of 16. We're going to talk about that, and some other letdowns that we're going to talk about soon. But what do you think about Swiatek's performance, Stefano?
Yeah, so I didn't watch the match by itself because it was on one of the main courts, and I was on the outside courts watching other action. But you usually can follow it on the radio and you see it on the big scoreboards. And yeah, at first it looked like she was in total control. Classic Swiatek. Nobody expects her to lose this type of match given the form she's in. And then suddenly it fell almost apart on on her own. I read that there were plenty of unforced errors. Yes, grass is tricky, um, but Iga is still good of a server still for the women's matches to deal with that quite easily. And yeah, very weird letdown. Consider that everybody knows, and there's always a lot of talk like, oh, Iga, she obviously a master on clay, but then when it comes to grass there's always a letdown. When is she gonna do it at Wimbledon and stuff like that, because obviously she also wants to do it, so that adds a bit of pressure. But on top of that, when you have Sabalenka retiring before her first match, really opens up your opportunities even more, because you have your main and fiercest rival, maybe not on grass, but we're going to talk about it later, um, that is already out of the tournament even before you started, basically. And yeah, it's a great opportunity. And I think that she's more disappointed than me that she didn't took advantage of it. But yeah, tough way to go out. Almost um, inexplicable how it actually happened.
And in fact, to further reinforce my thought from before, that Putintseva didn't play brilliant tennis, is the fact that in the next round against Ostapenko, she got blown away basically by Ostapenko, which has played a decent tournament, even though, as Stefano said, without big players like Sviontek and Sabalenka, this was the time for someone like her to really step in and to step up also her game and try and get at least to the semifinal. That's what I've had expected, honestly, for from her. She is in good shape. She's playing good tennis. So I really don't see how she didn't make it. But she encountered on her path someone like Krejcikova or Krejcikova. How do you pronounce it? I never can tell. But well, she encountered on her path the person who won Wimbledon, but we don't want to give out any spoilers here so far. Let's talk about the other two letdowns that I had in mind for this tournament, which are Coco Gauff, as I said, but more importantly, Paula Badosa. Paula Badosa is giving up so fast in the last few months. She always gets to the round of 16 when she's lucky, but that's where she stops. And I really don't know what's happening with her tennis, because especially this time she had um, an opponent in Vekic that, yes, he's playing very good tennis, and has dominated this tournament. I think I haven't seen Vekic in such a good shape since years, but at the same time, I expected so much more from Badosa, and she fought back in the second set. She won 6-1, but that wasn't quite enough. And I feel like she is settling down for just being there, just being one of the many. But I don't see her advancing to the final stages anymore. I don't see that hunger that I was talking about, for example, when you see Sviontek play.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Actually, when we um, think about these type of players, I was lucky enough. I was in the third crazy set between Harriet Dart and Katie Boulder with a colleague of mine, and I kept saying, yes, it is good tennis and it is exciting. It's a pretty even matched, but you have to play better than this if you want to win these tournaments. And we kept agreeing on this. And it's not just the level that you can produce, but it's also how bad do you want it and how focused you are on the court. And yeah, I always get that impression as well about Paula Badosa, which you actually caught me off guard with being one of your disappointments because I mean Pegula got eliminated in the second round. You mentioned Coco Gauff, and also somebody that really disappointed me. Well, we're gonna talk about her later. Uh, was yeah, on Jabeur, yeah.
On Jabeur, yeah, of
But
course.
but on that, I can be more understandable in the sense that Svitolina is a tough opponent on grass. Like she really blasts the ball, and it can make your life quite hard, and you have to run quite a lot compared to other
And what
courses.
a
Like
game that was between the
yeah,
two of them. Wow.
yeah, but deserve to go through. I mean,
No, you know what, Stefano? The players that I like the most, I am the toughest towards. Just like I've been saying to Sakari, it's the same for me to Badosa, because she deserves a lot better with the potential that she has. But I really believe that she's not exploiting it to the fullest. Maybe she's um, on the downside of her career peak. Um, I don't know what's happening, but I only know that from a player like Paula Badosa, I would expect something more, and she has it in her. But it's for the best, in my opinion, that Bekic advanced, because we got to see such a great quarterfinal against Lulusan, and that side of the chart was so exciting to me. It was so fresh to see new faces or old faces that come back, um, because we needed that in WTA. I just said earlier in our conversation how for the last 3 or 4 tournaments we've seen always the same people get to the semifinals, etc., and the final stages in general. So it was like breathing fresh air seeing the game between Lulusan and Vekic. I don't know if I should call her Lulusun because she's half Chinese, I know it, but she plays for New Zealand. Um, but anyway, what a game! What a nice, refreshing game that was, and I really saw Vekic get more confidence throughout the final stages of the tournament and believing herself and building up more and more and more. She faced a lot of challenges. It wasn't an easy game against Badosa. It wasn't an easy game against Lulusan. Um, but the first set where she won 6-1, I said to myself, okay, she is becoming a dangerous player. And this is really the core of this WTA Wimbledon edition. Um, it's about players that evolve throughout the tournament. And we've seen that with Paolini, we've seen that with Krejcikova, we've seen that with Lulu San herself. Um, and that's probably the only truth, the only fact that we can say about grass objectively, that you have to adapt to grass. Grass doesn't adapt to you. So that's probably the lesson that we get out of this edition of Wimbledon.
Yes, I mean that court, especially center court, has been there for 100 years. So everybody that steps on it is younger. So I don't think he's gonna change for you. Going to speak a second about Donna Vekic. All the matches she played went to the third set except for one in the second round. So she spent a lot of on time on court. And yeah, she also had an amazing tournament, and obviously one of the greatest semifinals in the history of Wimbledon women tennis that we're going to talk about later. And yeah, that side of the draw was full of interesting matches and upsets, including obviously Coco Gauff losing, which I actually wouldn't be that harsh to her, losing there with his two seed, being that young and not playing on grass often really affects you in this tournament, and you know the pressure and everything. But I think we can start to talk about the small elephant in the room, and you listener know we both love her, and she's been on a run of her life.
It's a
And
very small elephant.
one of the shortest players. She never won a match on grass before the start of this tournament in her professional career. And Jasmine Paolini was the first woman since Serena Williams to make it to the final of the French Open and the Wimbledon in the same year. So, absolute amazing accomplishment. And she got a bit lucky from the fourth round on. I mean, Madison Keys was about to go to serve for the match and she had to retire. She single handedly beat Navarro and then met in the semifinal with Vekic in one of the craziest matches you will ever see. As a matter of fact, the longest ever semifinal of the women's at Wimbledon, and it was such a crazy match. And then obviously she made it to the final.
Jasmine Paolini, you are conquering my heart game by game. Honestly, it's so good to see her play. She's such a dynamic, explosive player. I love her. She puts all her heart into her games. She learns from her mistakes as well. She's a very overall player. She's a 360 player. At least she's becoming like that, well rounded. But before we get really into the semifinal and the final, I wanted to talk about the round of 16 against Madison Keys, which retired in the end in the third set when they were 5-5. And that gives me a bit of a taste of turning tables, Stefano, because I really believe that Madison Keys was risking to win that game if it wasn't for injury. So maybe Paolini we would have seen a different future if Paolini didn't win that game because Keys retired. And there was another very beautiful and underrated game because Paolini won the first set 6-3, but then Keys won the second one 7-6 at the tiebreak. And then they went 5-5. So very underrated game, but that feels fits really well into Paulini's narrative of this tournament, but also of we saw in what we saw in Roland Garros last month. She's a player. She's one of those players that does not get anything for granted. She has to earn, unfortunately, everything, and that's what she's been doing also here in Wimbledon. And then in the quarterfinal, she was against Emma Navarro, which is a player that I'm really starting to like. Honestly, Emma Navarro, we've talked about it briefly. She was in the round of 16 against Coco Gauff, and yes, Stefano, you're right. Goff is still a young player, but I'm tired of repeating that. I expect more also from her. I have to say to Coco, wear more white because you look great in it. I really love it. But he didn't play well against your fellow American Emma Navarro. She deserved to go to the quarterfinals, but she faced a very, very, very strong Jasmine Paolini, which won 6-2, 6-1. Oh my God. What a cherry on top was that game. I was loving it. I loved the attitude of Paolini. I love every time that she wins how relieved she looks at the end. And when she went into the semifinal against Vekic, I was 100% convinced that she would have made it, even though it was a very tough game, as Stefano said, but also a beautiful game. Vekic won the first set 6-2, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be tough. But then Paolini came back 6-4, and and they went to the tiebreak in the last set. But what really stood out to me, as I said at the start of this section, is that Paolini never gives up. She runs for every single ball. She is fast. She's developing good technique. So I can't complain about anything. I wouldn't change anything about the way she plays, except for something that we're going to talk about as we get to the final. I don't know if you have something to add about that, Stefano.
Yeah, no, I mean, due to her height, she's only limited to what her serve can produce, obviously, and you can't really fix that. So I'd say that's gonna always going to be her weakest point. But yeah, in terms of mobility, not giving up the energy she brings on the court, and maximizing the chances she had in the last couple of months. And let's not forget that she's also spending a lot of time playing doubles with Sarah Rani, also very, very experienced player, and that really, really can help you a lot in this specific scenario. And I think she's still absorbing and she's still learning, in spite of being, well, the perfect definition of late bloomer. I mean, she's in the top five, I think, for the first time in her career now, and she's 28. And I guess we can start to talk about a bit the other side and the other semifinal, which saw my biggest disappointment of the tournament, obviously. And because when there were four players left, you had Vekic, Krejcikova, and Paolini. I think they're all three 28 years old. And you had a younger one, which is Rybakina at 25. She was the youngest one of the three, and the one that should have had the best chance once she made it there.
Are you saying, Stefano, that now that I am 28, I'm at the peak of my tennis shape? This is basically what you're saying, right?
What I'm saying is that if you are a late bloomer, you should
I can
blossom.
still do it.
Yeah. You still have time until your next birthday to blossom. Yeah.
Perfect. My birthday is in 1 month, so I'll see what I can do. But yeah, let's talk about that before we get into that. Biggest upset that we haven't talked about yet, and I did it on purpose. Elena Rybakina. Now, let's picture this. I'll take you by the end and follow me. You have Wimbledon 2024. You know that Sabalenka is out of the picture from the start. Swiatek loses in the first rounds. Then who's left? Yes, there is Ostapenko on your side. There is Danielle Collins still. We're going to talk about her. But you are up against Kalinskaya, Anna Kalinskaya, WTA number 20, something around that. And you, Elena Rybakina, destroy Kalinskaya, Yannick Sinner's new girlfriend. Shout out to that. I really like Kalinskaya, but I think something was wrong with her. In fact, she retired in the second set against Rybakina. She would have lost badly anyway. And then Elena advances to the quarterfinals against Svitolina, and we have talked already about Svitolina and the shape that Svitolina is in. And the game ends 2-0 for Rybakina, 6-3, 6-2. And when I saw that, I told Stefano, Rybakina is gonna win this tournament probably. And when I saw that Paolini had gone to the final and Rybakina was still playing the semifinal, I said to Stefano, "What are you gonna do if we have a final Rybakina versus Paolini? Who are you gonna support? Because I know that she's one of his favorite players of all time." But that wasn't the case because Rybakina lost the semifinal to Krejcikova, which is, in my opinion, the real elephant in the room of this tournament because it's a player that has gone so much under the radar lately. I really didn't see this coming. When I saw the game, I think it was the round of 16 against Danielle Collins. I was like, okay, easy game for Collins. She has been playing a beautiful tennis in the last few tournaments. She can make it at least to the semifinals. I couldn't be more wrong because Krejcikova turned out to be a player that is smart enough to read the opponent and to adapt. If there is to hit stronger than your opponent, she's able to do it, just like she did against Danielle Collins. She won the first set 7-5. It wasn't easy. She had to come back. And the second one was just a 6-3. And then she was up against Ostapenko. Now, I've told you about how much more I expected from Ostapenko. But the truth here is that Krejcikova from one round to the next, changed completely her style. She started lowballing Ostapenko. She started slicing a lot. She started drop shotting. And we all know that Ostapenko is a very strong player, but is not the most dynamic as Paolini, for example. So Krejcikova was great because she was able to see every single weakness in every single of their opponent and to exploit it in her favor. Now we are at the semifinal. Krejcikova against Rybakina. Stefano, I'm coming to you to say that I have not seen ever probably Rybakina so upset in a tennis game, and she's still able to hold it together and to stay quiet. But I could really tell that how upset she was during that game, and at the same time, the other huge strength of Krejcikova is that she builds her confidence up point by point, even more than Sabalenka. It's really, really impressive, in my opinion. She's celebrating, she's shouting after every single point that she wins. And probably that was one of the secrets to her advancing to the final.
Yeah, those are all great points. And to be absolutely fair to Krejcikova, I mean, as you mentioned, she beat Daniel Collins. The latter stages of her tournament were so impressive. She had to beat Collins, who was playing very good tennis, meet with Ostapenko. Ostapenko, former French Open winner, as also Krejcikova. So great quarterfinal, by the way, with both women with one slam already under their belt. And it does take a bit of that experience and grit to win tournaments, and then you grow and you kick out the favorite to win it at that point in Rybakina. So yeah, and then in the final you have to face one player who's been on the form of her life in the last couple of months. So and she beat them all. So absolutely deserved. And yeah, if we go to Rybakina, I that's one of the WTA players that I really wanted to watch live and get a feeling to seeing her live. And that's again the magic of Wimbledon. I was in the resale queue. There was still plenty of people ahead, and I just told a friend of mine, there's no chance that I'm gonna get a ticket before the Rybakina match started. And few minutes later, I got a text like, "Your ticket is ready. Just come pick it up." Ran there, bought it, and ran to court 2, which is on the other side of the tennis club. And I got in as soon as the match started. It was the second round against Laura Sigmund. And I had a great experience. So I fell in love with Rybakina. Then I fell out of love with Rybakina, and then fell in love again before the match finished. And yeah, all can I say is it's might be harsh, but it's my opinion. I think her coaching staff, the best way I can define them is a flock of clowns. And the reason I say this is that when once you spend a lot of time in the proximity of the coaching boxes, very close to the courts in Wimbledon, you kind of get to have a feeling of what's normal of them to do, to say, to act, and what is not normal. And I think that they were the absolute outliers. She was at some point crouching on the court in despair, and they were just looking around in the crowd. They were chatting with each other. They were not paying enough attention to the match. They were shouting at her while she was clearly not listening, and she was looking at them during changeovers whilst they were clearly looking away from her. I wonder if some of it is intentional or not. I think she will do well if she has the chance to change the coaching staff, but I obviously know her story and might be something hard to do. And yeah, and also I also think that she needs to play naked, not in a literal way, obviously, but more figuratively, in the sense that saw her play, and I felt that she was hiding herself inside of a shell of insecurity in some sense. She has one of the best serves on the women's tour, and you listeners starting to know me, you probably guessed at this point I love big servers, and especially on grass, and that's why I love the tennis on grass so much. And just by that, she should be favorite every time we go into Wimbledon. And she has a great forehand, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like the Yannick Sinner reel of the women. I finally found a player that blasts the balls no matter what. But then she's 25 already, and she has this beautiful, powerful forehand and ground strokes. But you never know where they're gonna end up. And I know you also like gear and apparel, and I don't know. I mean, I don't understand how you can perform in long sleeves over a t-shirt or whatever, and also I don't understand how you can change it from match to match. She just played in a t-shirt against in the semifinal, and when I saw her, she had she has this long sleeve kind of polo thingy. And they're so, the tennis players and the professional sports players, like in baseball, they're so almost scaramantic in some sense, that they always dress the same, always wear the same, always the same sleeve type, always the same length of socks, and all the stuff. And even small things like that, I think that can, I mean, I do understand it was outside and it was windy conditions, but you should find like a in between solution that works for everything, so you don't have to change every time. And I think it messes with your kind of mental perception a bit. And of course, she's mentally very strong. You never cannot guess if she was winning or losing. But she had some moments in that match I saw as well that she was really frustrated. And so yeah, that's the status of my relationship with Rybakina at this stage. And I really thought that after I saw her and Iga lost, that she would easily take home her second Wimbledon, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, no, I agree with you about the serve. We saw some great tennis from Rybakina in this tournament, but that wasn't enough at this point. So now all that's left to talk about is the final, and I really want to dedicate the right space to Krejcikova, but also to Paolini, and to add on top of what I said about her versatility, her adapting to what the game and the opponent require from her. Now, against Paolini, which, as we said today, is a very dynamic and explosive player, Krejcikova was controlling the game now. She was like, okay, you like running. Don't worry, I'll make you run. And that's what she did. That's how she won this final. And I'm not going to say it was an easy final for her to win because Paolini fought back. In fact, we have the first set for Krejcikova. Krejcikova was 6-2, and then Paolini won the next 6-2. But probably that's the only critique that I could make to Jasmine. She often loses the control of the game, and that's completely a choice of style when you play tennis. Um, some players are faster and they like to defend a little bit more and then wait for an opening. I think that's her style. But in this case, it ended up not working, and Paolini didn't have the versatility to switch mid game. And that's probably why, even though I really believed she was the strongest player, she didn't make it and she lost 6-4 in the last set. I don't know what you thought, Stefano, while watching the game.
Well, from more of an analytical point of view, Krejcikova obviously deserved to win the match, and it looked like absolute blowout in the first set. But yeah, as you said, Paolini doesn't give up, and as I said earlier about struggling on the serve, she had an appalling first set from that point of view. But she really grew into the match, and actually, by the time the match was over, Paolini won 68% of her service point, which is way ahead than what she normally does. And just to give you a perception, is in line with the sorry, this is the third set. She won 19 out of 28 service point, which is in line with men's percentages on grass. And in the third set, Krejcikova, she had 77%, so even better. So that break of serve in the mid of the third set proved to be the difference. Although we saw that she had a chance to break back later, and it was when I think Krejcikova was serving for the match, which is a testament to what I want to say. Is that when once they went to the third set, the tension is so high that you can even feel it from the hill, not even being at center court. And it sometimes in these type of matches, especially if you never won this tournament, like I mean, Serena would have been way more relaxed, but the tension for those two was to such a high level, and you can really feel it. So in these type of matches, it can happen that it's just a matter of who is more, I wouldn't say courageous, but who takes the right risks at the right time without the fear of failing, which at that stage is reaches a point that is beyond everything you've ever experienced. Even though, again, Krejcikova won a slam before, and Paolini was in the final of the Paris in Paris, but she never had a chance against Iga, so she was not in a position where you're literally 3 games away from winning the best tournament in the world.
And I think that on this note, we can end this episode for today, reminding that we will be here again tomorrow with the next one about ATP and about how Carlos Alcaraz triumphed for the second consecutive time in Wimbledon. So stay tuned, and thank you, Stefano, for being with me today.
Thank you, Michele. Thank you, everybody. It's always a pleasure. Let's speak soon.